Well, good morning. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Mosaic Church Online, live from our living room.
Yeah, it's so great to see each and every one of you here today.
That's right.
Well, today we're going to share with you practical tips if you are suffering with anxiety or depression, or if you know someone that is suffering with anxiety and depression, because I think we all know someone who's going through a hard time right now. Well, it's going to be a great service. Thanks for being here.
We hope that you will be able to share this with someone that needs this, because it's going to be very practical and helpful. But before we get into that, I'd like to ask our American friends watching, how was your Thanksgiving yesterday?
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. I know for our family, we've been really busy lately. We're in the middle of a move, busy with our job right now. So we just had a easy little get together last night with our family. Went out to dinner and had some turkey.
We loved it. It's very simple.
Yeah. Typically in the United States, we eat a lot of turkey. We have turkey leftovers for dinner, and we watch football games.
And I love the desserts.
Yeah. It's a great American holiday.
And what are you thankful for?
I am thankful for my, I guess my health.
Yes, the same.
Yeah, we both have family members who've had COVID.
My brother had it.
Yeah, and my sister and my aunt and uncle are currently going through it right now. And everyone seems to be recovering pretty well. So definitely thankful for that. And just thankful for God providing for us. It's been really great to see.
That's so true.
I have a question for you, Ella. If struggles with mental health, they're so common today, like we've talked about. We know people that have had it. Why do you think there is such a stigma attached to mental illness?
Well, I think it's because, for one, it's not easy to talk about it. It could be awkward and scary, especially for people who are going through it. How do you actually open up, and you're scared of what people might say to you because they don't understand what you're going through.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion around mental health. Misunderstanding, yeah. And I think there's some times where people feel, or they see it and it's scary, and so they don't want to deal with scary situations, and so it's not talked about a lot.
Or if you're, for example, if you're a Christian and you shared with Christian friends who have not, gone through it, they don't know what to tell you, because they don't know how to relate with what you're going through right now. And even church leaders are not adequately trained to counsel people who are going through it.
Yeah, and I think that the typical Christian response is, you just need more faith. I think that's more harmful than anything.
And it can be dangerous as
well. Yeah. And what do you feel about that? When someone says that?
If I hear that, I've never heard anyone tell me that, but just like reading and watching, I'd say, I've tried it and it's not working. Maybe it's not enough. It's not only the solution that could solve it.
Yeah. I feel like it's not just a spiritual thing. It's not only a spiritual thing. There's and if you look at some of the greatest men in the Bible, people that God loved deeply, they struggled with anxiety,
hopelessness.
Yes,
yeah.
If you look at King David, for example, King David struggled a lot with emotions, and I'm going to read here in Psalm 143 something that he said. He said, "The enemy pursues me; he crushes me to the ground. He makes me dwell in the darkness like those long dead. So my spirit grows faint within me. My heart within me is dismayed." And this is David speaking. You can hear the anxiety in his voice, and he's really struggling, and he's calling out to God. He's telling someone else. He's telling God, "Help me," is what he's what he's saying.
That's right. And even Job, was considered righteous and did everything, to honor God, and that's his reputation, righteous. But still, after God, tested him, the book of Job came about because of his laments and just pouring out his soul. And I read this morning from chapter 6 of that book, verse 2. "If only my anguish could be weighed and all my misery be placed on the scales, it would surely outweigh the sand of the seas." That is a major statement coming from someone who is, righteous and has a close relationship with God.
Yeah,
So.
loves God deeply. Yeah, for sure. And then ultimately, we have an example of Jesus. Jesus, the day before his death, was in the Garden of Gethsemane praying, and he was suffering great anguish. And he took Peter and James along with him, and he began to become deeply distressed and troubled. This is Jesus. Jesus was deeply distressed and troubled. So if you're deeply and distressed and troubled, Jesus had the exact same thing happen to him. He goes, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death.
Yeah.
Wow, this is Jesus talking here.
And I think it's comforting to know that, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ experienced it himself, and he knows the depth and of despair and loneliness and anguish. And we want you to know that what you're going through, Jesus also went through it, and you are not alone.
Yeah. We've been saying in this series, how are you doing really? We've been saying that it's okay not to be okay, and it really is. Well, today we have some really practical tips. We've talked about the spiritual side of things.
Yes.
Today we're going to learn some practical tips with a mental health expert who's going to give you some of who you should speak to.
Right.
And some
how to seek medical and professional help. So we're going to talk about science in this interview, and it's helpful.
Yeah, it's going to be very helpful.
For sure.
So here is Sharita Harkness interviewing Wendy Dickinson.
To wrap up our series, we're going to take a few minutes to be really practical. I'm here with Dr. Wendy Dickinson. She's a licensed psychologist and founder and CEO of Grow Counseling in Atlanta. Wendy, we are so happy to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I want to ask you a couple of questions, but the first question I want to ask is, what have you seen or heard or experienced from a lot of your clients when it comes to mental health challenges that are very unique to the season that we're in right now?
Yeah, I think we're experiencing a lot of unique things right now, and people are overwhelmed, they're stressed out. A lot of people are really at a breaking point. Yeah. And I think that there are two specifically unique things that we're facing. One is a sense of collective grief. So if you think about all the grief and the loss that we've experienced in the last few months, I think about students who ended the year in a way that they didn't expect, and there was a lot of loss. And then over the summer, they didn't get to do the things they would normally do. And now here we're starting back the school year, and they're feeling a sense of loss. Yeah. People have lost jobs. Parents are feeling disconnected from their communities. So there's a lot going on in terms of grief. I don't think that everybody's labeling it that way, but that really is a feeling that people are having. And usually when people experience grief, people in their community, their friends, their family, they're able to rally and help support them. And so they take on part of the grief and hold it for that person who's experiencing the grief. But right now, our grief buckets are all full. We all have more than we can handle, or just as much as we can handle. And so we don't have the ability to really take on and hold other people's grief. We're kind of just passing it around from one person to the next. So that creates a real challenge. The second thing is that people are experiencing enormous levels of stress, right? And I don't think that people really recognize how destructive stress can be.
Yes.
The American Medical Association has identified that stress is a factor in more than 75% of physical illnesses that we face. So it's not just a mental health issue, it's a physical health issue too. I talk to clients about a simple scale: green, yellow, red, right? So green's a day at the beach, red's like super stressed out, crisis mode.
Okay.
Most Americans live in yellow or maybe high yellow or orange, right? Like already. It doesn't take much to shift them into red. Yeah. Three things that we know increase a stressor is when it's unpredictable, unknown, and doesn't have an end point.
I need you to say that again.
It's unpredictable, unknown, it doesn't have an end point. It describes exactly what we've been facing for so long. Yeah. One of the things that we know is that stress over time can become a crisis, and crisis over time becomes a trauma. So when we live in this high stress mode for so long, there are really powerful ramifications to it. And we start to see people unwind. We start to see people deal with hopelessness, depression, anxiety, fear, despair.
Yeah, I was going to say despair, deaths. There's been so many people that have, like you said, had committed suicide and different things because of the stress. And it's just, like you said, we've never experienced it before.
It's so hard.
So it's just,
we have to rewind pretty far back in our collective history, probably to like a World War, to identify a time when every single person, every community, every family, every friend group has been impacted by something in some way at the same time. And what I've seen from that is people kind of self-isolating, even aside from quarantine and trying to stay safe physically. I think people have really emotionally kind of gone into a hole because it feels like if I reach out and say, how are you doing? I don't know if I can handle or hold what you have to share. So it's in isolation over time leads to trauma. We know that relational connection insulates us from the negative effects of trauma, but isolation can actually lead to trauma. So it just intensifies this experience that we're having.
That actually gets me or segues me into the next question, right? I know for me personally, the first first 2 or 3 days that everything got announced of, okay, we're going to shut down, it's going to be closed. I have my own business and I lost every single job, every single one. So all of a sudden where I was normally used to kind of like, okay, we're going to work this out as a freelancer. You know, I got a little couple weeks in between. Now I have no time. Now I have no money. Now I have no prospects. And that the weight of that all of a sudden is much heavier than before. For all of the people who were experiencing things due to job loss, due to, losing loved ones, the despair deaths, all of those things, what do you say that's practical? Because we've been talking a lot the last couple of weeks in the series. I would say more on an abstract level, like, hey, be honest with yourself, be honest with God, be honest with others. But how do you practically stay away from the isolation that would lead to trauma?
What can you do?
Right. What do you actually do? Or some small things I can do at home that I don't know if they follow in line with self-care or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I've found myself saying a lot to clients is under this umbrella of being gentle with yourself is just, this is hard because it's hard. This is hard because it's hard. It's not hard because you're broken or because you're not enough or because you have mental health issues. This is just hard. So I think, as a real practical starting point, we need to give ourselves permission to recognize that what we are walking through and carrying is extremely hard. From a practical perspective, I'd break it into 3 areas. So mind, body, spirit, right?
Say that one more time.
Mind, body, spirit, right? Let's start with spirit. We are hardwired for connection. We are hardwired for relationships with God, with people. And all of that has been kind of dismantled, the way that we connect with people. And so I would say make it a priority. We're going to have to be creative. It's going to be different. It's not going to feel normal. But we've got to find ways to stay connected to combat that isolation that we were talking about. So I would say make relationships, stay connected, make it a priority.
So like FaceTime calls or...
whatever it takes. Stand in your yard and yell at your neighbor. You know, whatever.
Not angrily.
No, not
nicely.
angrily.
Okay, yeah.
So that spirit, with your mind, it's really important what you focus on. I always say to clients, what you focus on grows. So this idea that we're going to find what we're looking for. If we're looking for the stressors out there, we're going to notice those more.
Yes, ma'am.
If we're looking for the helpers, if we're looking for the resources, if we're looking for the support, we're going to be more focused on that. Now, that's not to say stick your head in the sand.
Right.
But I like to think of it in terms of plan for the future, but live in the present, right? Plan for the future, live in the present. Stay grounded. Because most of us, if we answer the question, are you all right now? Right this moment, are you okay? Most of us, most of the time, would be able to answer yes, right? Now, the future's going to hold what it does, and we need to plan for that, but we don't need to live in that. That's where anxiety and fear and worry exist. So stay grounded in the present. It's interesting, the research shows that the brain actually doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So what that means is that, you're asleep at night, you're having a dream, someone's chasing you. and you wake up and the covers are all a wreck and you're all sweaty and you're breathing. Is it just me? Maybe it's just me.
No, it's not true. The first couple weeks of COVID, I was like, I got COVID. I got a fever. I have COVID. And it was just the heat was on because it was cold.
Your body is biochemically responding as if it's actually happening.
Yeah.
Because your brain doesn't actually know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So when we spend a lot of time in the future imagining the worst case scenario, catastrophizing, how things could go wrong, that's what our body's going to respond to, and it's going to put our body under a lot of stress. So you plan for the future, but stay grounded in the present. We've talked about the spirit, we talked about the mind, the body part. I would say let's get real practical on everyday routines. Sleep deprivation is a form of torture, right? So one of the first things I assess with people is how are you sleeping? Because everything is going to be built off of that.
Okay, so how do you sleep? Because I struggle. I mean, honestly, the last couple of months, like they've been, because I didn't have a routine. I think I did good the first 2 weeks because it was like, this will be over. 2-3 weeks we'll be done, we'll be back to life, right? And then month 3, I was like, Jesus. And I haven't had the best, sleep pattern. So for someone who might be watching, who is struggling with insomnia, or they already had problems sleeping and now, like you said, they don't, how does routine play into that?
So routine is really important. I would do a quick search online for sleep hygiene. There are a lot of tips and tricks out there, but a lot of it is about being really intentional, very mindful, staying in a routine so that your body knows when it's time to go to sleep. For people who struggle long-term with sleep, they may need to talk to somebody, a therapist or a doctor, to help with that. But that's one of those key building blocks that we have to figure out with people first, because everything else is going to kind of come toppling down if sleep isn't in the picture. So sleep, exercise is my go-to number one thing with clients. Don't worry, you don't have to run a sprint marathon.
Like, I can just walk. Can I just walk around the block?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
Because I am not the one that's going to get up. I'll eat the kale, but I'm not about to run for forever.
All you have to do is get your heart rate up. If you get your heart rate up for 30 minutes a day, so outside walking in Atlanta, we got great hills to walk on. The research shows that it's equivalent to a low dose of antidepressants for most people. So it's a real practical thing that we can do that boosts our serotonin, it boosts our neurotransmitters, kind of helps to re-regulate and get everything back in line. Now, some people may still need an additional boost, and that's where we would recommend they see a psychiatrist or their doctor. But start with the exercise and see what it does to help. For a lot of people, it just gets that momentum going. And then I would say nutrition. You mentioned the kale.
Yes.
When we're out of routine, we're off track, there's a tendency to comfort eat, comfort drink, and we need to be really mindful about what we're putting in our bodies. So if we can get some of those basic things in place, it helps set us up to handle stressors.
Yeah. That actually also leads me into the next question, which is just more for people who, you said it a little bit earlier, there are some people who have a bigger issue than just kind of self-care routine. They're to the point where they are at the despair, death, and just having a really hard time getting out of bed in the morning, not wanting to talk to anybody, not being able to reach out. I know that I shared that my son had passed away, and I went through a lot of grief. And people ask me at different times, like, oh, hey, so how come you didn't call me or just reach out? And I'm like, you don't understand. I can't, think
the end of
in
everything.
the morning. Right, I can't call you. I'm not even thinking about you. It's enough to get out of the bed just to go get something to eat, or to get out of bed to go downstairs and get a drink. I don't have the capacity to be able to call somebody. So what do you say to those people who need something very practical, or what would be a practical next step for them if they're in that dark, kind of heavy place?
One of the things that I hope comes from this conversation and other conversations that I know are happening right now is just to be able to normalize the process of counseling. You don't have to be crazy to go to counseling, right? Like I say, the most healthy people, I think, are the ones who've reached out for help, right? And so I like to think of it as a process that we would give each other in a perfect world. if we had all the things to give each other, we would show up for each other like great counselors. You know, we would be empathic, we would lean in, we'd be able to hold other people's things, we'd come in wisdom. We wouldn't be clouded by our own stuff. But we don't live in a perfect world. And what therapists have learned how to do is to set our things aside for the moment and to show up 100%. At least 90%.
I was gonna say, because you go to school for that. To be able to do it. It's not easy, like you said, to be able to, me not having the background, the knowledge, the understanding, the wisdom.
It's a practice, you know? And so when we're able to show up with somebody like that, that is healing in and of itself. But then there are specific tools and strategies and ways that we can equip people to walk through whatever it is that they're dealing with. And so I think part of that is naming for them what's going on. I believe really strongly when we name something, we take some of the power away from it. So when we don't know what's going on, it feels big. It's like a monster that's looming. But when we can say, hey, I understand this. It's not easy, but I understand what's going on, and I understand there's a way through this. And on the other side, I'm going to be better when I can move through it.
That, So I think that naming, like you said, helps to then say, oh, well, it's okay for me to seek help because it's not like, I'm not crazy. That's the stigma that I know a lot of people, I thought, I'm not going to the therapist. I'm fine. I'm good.
I think I've seen a shift in that maybe over the last 10 years or so where people are talking more about counseling and it feels less stigmatized, but there still is that piece of it. I think, especially in terms of what's modeled for us in our communities and in our families, if people aren't talking about, hey, counseling is an option and it's helpful and it's normal and we can help you find somebody, then in the middle of something hard, we're probably not going to have it in ourselves to reach out and find somebody in those moments.
Because it's like a muscle. You got to work it. You got, even if it's not your muscle, people around you need to be the muscle to kind of help you move in that direction. I know that you work with men specifically a lot. You've kind of have a focus there. And you and I were talking a little bit earlier, and I told you that I felt as a woman of color, it was somewhat hard for me to reach out or even think about reaching out to a mental health personnel, because that's not something talked about in my community, really. It's kind of like you should get through it. And I know that there are many factors that kind of play into that. But specifically for someone who is not familiar with mental health, with the necessity of a mental health professional in their life, or that it's okay to not be okay, what do you say to those people? Like, how do you get them to reach out? Like, what would you want to tell someone if they were watching? And I know I said men, persons of color, but all people.
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, it's brave to reach out. And we have to acknowledge that when we do things that require bravery, it also can be very scary at the same time, right? So I always, when I schedule an appointment with somebody for the first time, I always acknowledge this is a really brave thing for you to reach out. So I would say start by asking your friends. I suspect that more of our friends go to counseling than you imagine. Yes, it's just not something that people always talk about in conversation. But I think if you were to start floating out and say, hey, I'm thinking about counseling, do you know anybody? Do you know anybody that goes to counseling? I think that there's a level of vulnerability that might come pretty quickly to the surface. So that's one thing is ask for help, ask for some referrals. I do think there's some barriers around, finances, finding somebody, knowing how to connect, wondering what the process would be like. And when you're in the middle of something hard, all of those things just seem harder. So I love what you said a minute ago about it being a muscle that you have to kind of flex. I think it's a great time to seek out a professional before you're in that crisis or the trauma. So when you're feeling stressed, but you still have some bandwidth, that's a great time to reach out to somebody. And maybe you don't go for a long time, but you establish a relationship and you figure out what the process is like. It's not nearly as scary as people think that it would be. It's super helpful. Usually at the end of the first session, people are like, why haven't I been here sooner?
I felt that way, and I went in with the the mindset of, do I lay on the couch? Do I sit up? Because television,
You can do whatever
movies.
you want to.
Yeah, she said the same thing. She's like, you can do whatever you want to do. But when we finished that first session, I had gotten so much off. And she also reminded me that it wasn't just, hey, this is once and done. Like, this is a journey.
Yeah.
It's a process. And it may have I feel like our time was super short. I was there for 80 minutes. And I'm like, girl, it's only 15 minutes. We don't have any more time. I got more stuff to say. And it was much easier once we started. And now there are things that she's taught me, in our time together that I'm able to use so I don't get to read as quick, as well as to encourage other people. But I never would have gone if someone else hadn't encouraged me to go.
Yeah.
Just a few more questions. For those of us who have a friend or a family member who is in that place of like, they're either yellow or they're already all the way to red, they may not realize it, but how do we support them? Especially, I feel like it's hard to tell someone, hey, you're depressed, you need to go see somebody. Yeah. And it's hard to receive that from people. If you do have the thought of, oh, this is a stigma, or I'm not crazy, or whatever, what are some practical ways that as a community we can lean in to help those that we love the most?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think that we spend a lot of time trying to appear okay, And so when you see somebody struggling, they're probably already in orange or red.
Yeah.
Even if they're looking like they're yellow on the surface, And so I would say lean in, ask the question and then ask it again. Ask the question and then say, no, but really, how are you really doing? Yeah. Most of the time, people are relieved to have somebody really ask that question. They worry that they'll burden somebody by telling them, how they're really feeling, and so they skim over the surface, right? But when you lean in, you say, yeah, no, but how are you really doing? Most of the time, they're relieved to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I would say just listen. A lot of times we need, back to our buckets, we need somebody to hold our story. We need somebody to just listen without trying to fix the problem.
Can you please say that one more time?
Without trying to fix the problem.
Without trying to fix the problem. I can't tell you how many people, for all the things that happen with my son, oh, well, you just need to do. Oh, and I'm like, I'm actually talking to you, and I don't need it. You don't have a solution. Yeah. I don't have like a physical thing that I can do. Like you said, you're not the counselor.
That's a phrase that I feel like we would be all better off if we could ban from our vocabulary. Well, you just need to.
Ma'am, please. So I think that as you're saying,
so listen openly, back to what we were talking about before, maybe try to help them name some of the feelings that they're having. Because when you're in the midst of something and it, you may be able to identify, you feel, cloudy and just kind of overwhelmed and you don't know how you're feeling a lot of times. So somebody be able to say, hey, you sound really sad, or that's really hard. You sound like you're struggling.
Yeah.
Starts to kind of create some awareness so that then when you do come back and say, I don't know if this would be helpful, but I really want to tell you about my experience with counseling.
Yeah.
I think it could be helpful for you.
Yes.
How can I help you with that?
How can I help?
Yes. Ask the question.
Yeah.
How can I help?
Yeah. No, that's good. I don't know. Is there anything else that that just is kind of like burning on your heart? Like, hey, I would want anyone to know wherever they are, whether they're in that yellow space, the orange, the red, or even in the green, because I know you said reaching out before you get to those places. Like, what would be your advice or something that you would want people watching right now to know when it comes to that?
I would love for one of the bright spots from this season, I would love for one of the bright things to come from this is that we are all a little more vulnerable about talking about what we need, right? Like instead of having these walls and this armor up, I'm great, I've got it all together. I think a lot of times when we're in leadership, whether it be leadership of a family or an organization, we feel like we have to project this image that we have it all together. Yep. And we don't have it all together. Nope. None of us have it all together. Yeah. And at different times, we're all going to be more of a mess than other times, And so whether it feels like a significant mental health issue or it feels like an area where you're just struggling, there's space to let your guard down and really become the best version of yourself that you were created to be. Yeah. And I think if we could change the conversation where we were more vulnerable and we were talking about that, we would have more people who were the best versions of themselves that they were created to be.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy, so much for being here with us today. I think everything that you said was so practical and really will give a lot of people handles to be able to make decisions, whether that's regarding, hey, do I get a counselor or do I build a new routine? Just everything you said was so helpful, and we're just so grateful to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, thanks. And thank you so much for being here with us today and for journeying with us through this topic for the last couple of weeks. If at any point in time today you felt like, hey, that's me, I need to take some steps towards healing, we would love to walk alongside you.
God of Abraham, you're the God of covenant and of faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven to do just what you said. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass.
Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me.
Oh, yeah, yeah. The seasons change, but you remain the same. Oh, God.
God from age to age, though the earth may pass away, the word remains the same. Yeah, your history can prove there's nothing you can do. You're faithful and true.
Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Your faithfulness never runs out. Never runs out.
I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my
out together. From the rising sun to the setting.
Same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Hallelujah.
Thank you, Jesus.
Well, I love that song. That's actually my favorite song
Yes,
at the moment.
It's on repeat in the car.
Yeah, we do
the
listen
home.
to it a lot. It just says, I just love it. It's like, great is his faithfulness to me. It just means so much to me. Love it. Well, thank you guys for being here today. I want you to know, if you're here and you're going through anxiety, that you're not alone, and that it's okay not to be okay, and that Mosaic, we want to go through that with you. So please reach out to us on our social media, on our Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We want to connect with you, and we want to go through that journey with you, because you don't want to go through that alone.
And we pray that you will be able to find someone that will show up in your life and walk that journey with you and be there for you when you need someone to be there.
Yeah, we definitely want to be that for you. So thanks again for coming here this week. Have a great rest of your week. If you're new here, click on subscribe, click on the little bell notification. We put out helpful content every most days of the week to help you in your relationship with Jesus. So check that out and don't miss out. So good to see you. Have a great week.
Have a great week, everyone.
We'll talk to you soon. Take
God
care.
bless.
Sneak peek back. I just want to say thank you to Ian and Isabel, who are watching on vacation in the Maldives.
Wow.
Impressive.
So much to be grateful for.
Impressive.
I don't have mic. Can you hear me?
So impressive. That's amazing. Thank you all for being here today. Arun, Sheba, Matt,
Jeremy and Rebecca,
Dina, Jeremy, Rebecca.
Marta.
Yeah, so good to see you. And we'll see you tonight at our night of worship. Thanks for sticking around.
See
Have
you
a good
guys
one.
later. Enjoy the beach and the food and the sand and everything. The sun. Where's the gun? Maybe not. There's no mic.